Pro Tour being in town has just brought in so many strong players from all over the world. We talked about Andrea Mengucci just a second ago. And, Dykman just 3-0. He is our player of the year last year and our players champion of last year as well, winning the event. He is going to be playing in that Pro Tour next weekend, thanks to qualifying via our events.
Yeah, and it's kind of a flex, right, to come to this event that's, a week before the Pro Tour that you've qualified for, and you've just gone, you know what I'm going to play this weekend? I'm going to play Rakdos Lutri. It's such a flex, and to go 3-0 in that process.
Yeah, and he's playing such limited bangers, too, as Sunset Pyramid in his deck today. To be extra, he is playing Bankbuster, Maze Mind Toad, and Sunset Pyramid to be like the Reckoner Bankbuster slot of normal.
Jeez, that is impressive. You've got to be digging deep after a while.
Yeah.
And so Stephen Dykman is up against Mono White Humans. So we talked earlier about how Boros Convoke is the best aggressive deck. Yet Mono White Humans today is 3-0 so far. So what could play into that? Why is, Mono White Humans doing so well so far?
Yeah, and so for Ty here, it's sort of probably a mixture of a few things. One, it's not like Humans is bad, right? Like, it's still solid. Convoke is just probably a little bit better across the board. But even if you're not the 100% optimal thing in a theoretical computer world, you can still do well and succeed. We see Dykman here playing Rakdos Lutri, for example. I have to assume this is not the... Even if Rakdos Lutri is the best deck in Pioneer, I find it hard to believe that Dykman nailed it on the first go of all the one-ups, right? You're just going to sometimes be able to, overpower people. And Mono White Humans does have some really good draws. 1-drop, 2-drop, 3-drop, Thales Lieutenant plus Brave the Elements. That sort of draw we saw dominate Pioneer for a long time. And Ty's deck is probably just doing a very similar thing to that as we'll see the game progress here.
Absolutely. And it looks like Stephen Dykman's kept a pretty strong hand of that Reckoner Bankbuster, Smuggler's Copter, and I believe I saw Sheoldred the Apocalypse in there as well. So it feels very Rakdos mid-range, but only one option.
Yeah, and we talked about this a little bit in round one, kind of in joke and jest, but it's true. Kind of the idea behind Lutri decks is that you play a lot of similar cards to what you would normally play that are slightly different. Sometimes that's beneficial, sometimes it's a negative. But then when the real get is that your Lutri is 2 copies of 1 card later in the game.
Absolutely. So Ty kicks things off with a Kythian hero of Akros. Steven's just going to play a tap blood crit. So Ty's going to get in for a little bit of damage here, which is what you want to do as the mono white player.
Mm-hmm.
And that is a pretty good backup. Fadio Guardian of Thraben is a fantastic card here. Mm-hmm. And given the amount of non-creature spells that I imagine Stephen Dykman is running in his Rakdos Lutri list.
Mm-hmm.
So Ty just gets really aggressive here with this Thalia and Kythian. Steven's kind of weighing up if he's going to trade his Inti away to stem some bleeding, but Inti is a really good card just to keep around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Inti does this really awesome thing of allowing you to apply pressure to your opponent while drawing cards, which is typically not something you get to do. Now, you don't always have your cards lined up perfectly. You only get them for the turn, but it is a great way to convert extra lands or resources that might not be great in this matchup somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we see the get lost there from Taidhg. This is kind of a new addition to the mono white decks. We saw them start playing Ossification, or actually around 1 year ago today when Pro Tour All-Day-1 happened. I think we're a day off from that anniversary. And get lost sort of a better version of that effect for this deck. The map tokens sometimes can bite you by giving your opponent +1 counters, but for the most part, just being an instant that can answer other things as well is really huge.
Also, Stephen Dykman gets to use his own map tokens that he won from last season's success at the NRG Series.
Mm-hmm.
So Taidhg continues to get aggressive here. We do want to apologize about the camera glaring in and out. Our production team is working on it. So please do bear with us while we solve that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something got messed up and it happens.
Yeah, technology. Not much we can do, unfortunately. But Ty has a really aggressive clock here. We have a recruitment officer, which is really good if you decide to flood out on some lands. And is threatening to flip this Kythian next turn.
Yep. You know, it kind of looks like there's a club party going on right now at the NRG, you know, like the music's popping, you know, bomb, bomb, bomb.
People are so excited to see this Lutri deck.
Mm-hmm.
I blame Lutri for this.
Yeah. This never happened when Lutri was off screen, that's all I'm saying.
Right?
Yeah,
right.
follow the money, you know?
For the few minutes we had Lutri on in one of our rounds, it was fine.
Yeah. But honestly, it was only one turn. It might have been happening then, and we just, you know, didn't notice.
For sure, for sure. But you can see Stephen Dykman is just thinking about his turns, thinking about how to survive here. While he is on 14 life, which is a decent amount, that will go down fairly quickly if there isn't a way to stem this bleeding. So we have a Sheoldred of the Apocalypse, which is a really good way to recoup some life. Pending that Taidhg doesn't have a get lost to immediately deal with it. Also works really nicely with this Reckoner Bankbuster.
Mm-hmm. Just a nice little combo. So we're going to come to the booth here. Let's get my face on camera. That's the people are here to see. We all know it. We're going to pause the match. We're going to give them a time extension, and we're going to fix it real quick because basically we need to turn the camera off and on. It seems like maybe a setting was bumped at something between the rounds. So that's going to fix that for y'all. And honestly, you know, you wanted to see me. We're here. How are we doing, Emma?
I'm doing great. I get to see a Lutri deck, and we're right back into it now. So Mason got his 5 seconds of spotlight, and now we are back. And it seems to be the camera is back to normal. So hopefully we can get some things going. Oh, I spoke too soon. But
nope.
Camera issues aside, you can tell that Ty is just being aggressive because cool, you have a Sheoldred, I have a Border Threats, and I have a Kythian that's just going to turn into a Gideon.
Yep. And these players are going to start sideboarding, and while they're doing that, we're trying to get that taken care of as well. But let's pull up the sideboards here and let's talk about what might be going on here, because I think Dykman might have a couple unique cards.
I mean, a couple is a stretch, right?
Yeah, that's, you know what, it's true. It's all of them.
Where do you even start here, Mason? Like, what do you hope to bring in / what do you hope to see? Because obviously there's one card, like you're not seeing multiples here. It's really interesting deck building.
Yeah, it's an interesting puzzle to solve. So he actually has some really smart things. We talked about this before. We're trying to double up, right? So we have Rending Volley and Raven Feeblement. That's going to be sort of our 1 mana answer to white aggressive creatures. We also have Noxious Grasp. It's a 2 mana answer, but that doubles up against control decks. So we'll probably see all those cards come in. Anger of the Gods and Languish and Path to Peril are all in our sideboard. So we're going to probably see multiples of those cards come in as well. Kalitas is a card we saw players actually play as a one-of back in the day. Perfectly, we only have one here. That's going to be a good card to stabilize against these aggro decks and let us build up the zombies. Hidetsu Consumes All, something I can see on the play as a way to answer multiple 1-drops. And I want to give a shout-out, by the way, to Erebos, God of the Dead, somehow finding its way into Stephen Dykman's sideboard. Just was the card we needed for the matchups. Your opponent can't gain life. Is very strong against Amalia and gives you the card draw engine you actually need against them as well. So a very unique and clever solution to a problem with the Lutri life we're living.
And let's go to Ty's sideboard with the mono white humans. So Mason, what do you like here on the draw as the mono white humans player?
4 wedding announcements. Slap those bad boys into your deck. They fix every matchup against Rakdos decks, clearly. No, but jokes aside, that is a card that is typically your go-to in these spots. It gives you just a lot of bodies, turns your threats later in the game into much better threats. And I have to imagine that Dykman's deck might weirdly have an answer to it that normally you don't have. Like, we might have something like Feed the Swarm in our deck just to, like, you know, reach our 60 unique cards with Lutri. I'll have to take a glimpse of that in a second. But it's still going to be very powerful. And if Dykman draws some of his weaker or more conditional or out of place cards, the wedding announcements are going to do a really good job of running you over, because if gone unanswered, they are really good against these Rakdos decks, but they are definitely not a lights out card as some players act like they are.
Yeah. Plus, they are better in multiples as well. If the game goes long enough, if Dykman isn't able to draw, his very different named removal spells against the humans deck, it can just easily snowball out of control.
Yeah, it is very easy for that to happen. As our players are finishing up sideboard here in a second, we'll be back into our feature match area. But yeah, this mono white deck, when we look at it, hasn't got a whole lot of new cards when I'm taking a peek to it. But just, being powerful, proactive threats is a really good place to be typically in the format. So, puts people to the test, right? Like, even if your deck isn't the best positioned, if I go 1, 2, 3, and those are the correct ones against you, it's going to be really hard for you to stabilize.
Yeah, and with the introduction of Get Lost from the Lost Canvas at Ixalan, that's just a slight upgrade, but that upgrade is enough in some cases, which is much better than the ossification, as you mentioned before. While Mono White Humans doesn't have any, big upgrades from Murders of Karlov Manor, it still does that thing, and it still does it pretty well, which is just deploying a curve and just turning sideways.
Yeah, for sure. And those players are almost done sideboarding, and yeah, just one thing that I think is underappreciated by players is how low a fail rate creatures have, right? If I play a creature, it's like drawing a shock every turn, right? So if you don't have something to stop those creatures, I am just hitting you over and over and over again, essentially drawing that same card, and it builds up really quickly, and that's what the human deck likes to do.
Absolutely. And looks like we are back to the feature match area. Hopefully we have our camera issues sorted and we can get into game 2.
Yep. I'll be honest. I can see the players shuffling when we're talking, and earlier I said they're almost done. They've been shuffling for a while. I'm just gonna call it like I see it. Their decks are thoroughly randomized. This behind the coverages, I can see a little corner. When I'm talking, I know what they're ready. It's how I'm ready to do it so quickly.
Let's see what players open up here, and hopefully, I'm more interested to see what Stephen Dykman opens, just because this Lutri deck is just wild. It looks like Dykman's just playing a Blood Crypt, and Taidhg does not have a turn 1 play, which is not the best that you want as an aggressive player. You just want to deploy that clock as soon as possible.
Might be a good sign that Taidhg has cards like Thalia, like Wedding Announcement, things that are going to cause big problems for Dykman.
Yeah, and speaking of Thalia drops down, but Stephen Dykman does have this Smuggler's Copter, a recently unbanned card in Pioneer. Mason, what are your thoughts on that unbanning of Smuggler's Copter?
It has been a pretty big shakeup to the format. Even though not every deck plays it all the time, it has been a really great ad for aggressive decks, and we've seen versions of Rakdos pop up that play this card and Inti as an example, as a way to be much more aggressive. We saw Derek Pike earlier in the day playing, Reckoner Bankbuster, but it is something that, gives you a lot of selection when you're playing your games.
And Taidhg plays a Anointed Peacekeeper here as a way to just see what Stephen Dykman's up to and trying to figure out what the hell is in his hand. So it looks like we have an Archfiend of Dross, Torch of the Tower, looks like a Seasoned Pyromancer, and a Sulphurous Springs. Not Seasoned Pyromancer, Young Pyromancer.
You're all good. Seasoned Pyromancer would be one Dykman would be very happy to have in his deck until the deck check came. And then he'd be a little unhappy.
Yeah. Those borderless arts will look similar to me. Okay, looks like Archfiend of Dross is the pick here, which makes sense. Mono White has a hard time dealing with that outside of the Get Lost.
Yeah, and typically you want to try and name the most expensive thing that you can to kind of compound that, right? Like Dykman's best play next turn would be to slam that as well. So now if we want to, get that down sooner, we're going to need to sacrifice stuff like our Smuggler's Copter, which is a pretty real cost.
Yeah. Smuggler's Copter is the kind of card you would love to just keep around. Here comes the Young Pyromancer, and we've got this Torch of the Tower. She's probably going to take out this Thalia.
Yeah, a little uncharacteristic for Dykman here.
Yeah, like Dykman seems to be... Dykman strikes me as the kind of player that just knows what they're doing at all times and doesn't really like deliberates things and goes back on things. But he's not quite sure here.
Yeah, I would say typically, I guess he's trying to incite a double block here.
Yeah. Looks like we're just trying to dig a little deeper with the Smuggler's Copter.
And if you're Ty, you've got to have alarms on. Like, wait, what was he going to play in his main phase? What would he care about playing? You know?
Here comes the pen. You know, things are serious when there's a pen. And here comes the torch. And we get an elemental token out of the deal as well, which is it's nice value just to have on when you're playing against a humans deck that tends to have a lot of low toughness stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, at worst it's going to chump block. At best it's going to trade. And that can be a really hard spot for Ty if they start falling further and further behind.
And we have an Adeline. This is a pretty good top deck. So can Stephen Dykman answer this Adeline? That's probably going to get very aggressive next turn. So we have a Soccer Zone. We have a Hidetsugu who consumes all, which is not a bad top deck usually, but it just doesn't do too much here, unfortunately.
Yeah, we talked about how, because of the awkwardness, we're just going to have to bring in some cards that are sometimes going to be great and sometimes going to be weird. I think this is a good example of that. But luckily, Smuggler's Copter is a good one to kind of help fix that awkwardness.
Absolutely. This Young Pyromancer is doing some work.
It's funny, Dykman has Lutri as the companion. That's the whole joke. No, but the actual funny thing is, if we draw like a 1-mana answer, we might want to wait a turn because we can pick up Lutri and then use Lutri with the 1-mana answer to clean up both creatures on the next turn / a potential future problem that Ty might be presenting.
Yeah. We all want to just see Lutri in play and do Lutri things.
Lutri 9 cards in hand, if you think about it. Just don't think too hard.
Yeah. So it looks like Dykman drew a mountain off that Smuggler's Copter, and he's just thinking about what to discard here.
Yeah, I love this discard the spell. This lines you up with double land in hand. Once Soken's in, which you can maybe use to get some extra value, draw another land. But now you're just 1 land away from the Archfiend to draw, and you get to pick up the Lutri if you want it. But it looks like Dykman doesn't. Maybe trying to bluff something. Does have stuff like Hive of the Eye Tyrant, etc. Not in play currently, but looks like I guess the Sokenzen is really what's happening here.
Yeah. So Kenzen into Archfiend of the Dross isn't a bad way to go, especially. We'll see what Ty does. Will there be another Thalia? I will say Ty has a great choice of basics.
They're very nice.
Odyssey block has some pretty sweet basics.
Looks like.
Oh, here comes the Thalia. Well, that's going to do a whole lot, but hey, it's a 2-1 with First Strike.
Yeah, it feels like Ty maybe has like a 3-drop in hand or something that we were consider playing over the Thalia, but decided just to present this Thalia to make things awkward in case, Archfiend draws plus something else tries to come down on a future turn.
Yeah, and considering Stephen Dykman discarded that Hidetsugu, maybe Ty thinking, hey, Dykman must have some spells or something, because Hidetsugu is like a fairly good card here. Why would he wouldn't want to keep lands, right? So maybe that's part of the thought process.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense. Also, if Dykman's not picking up the Lutri, he probably means he has something to use his mana on, right?
Mm-hmm. And looks like Adeline does get in, so Dykman goes down to 17. Ty is on 11, and that is nothing to sniff at, especially with the Smuggler's Copter that can just keep chipping in, because humans doesn't have a really good way of dealing with flyers.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of flyers, Emma, Archfiend Dross is a big flyer.
It's a very big flyer indeed. I feel like Steven is thinking if he wants to crack this Sokazan for some spirit tokens. He is very much in the tank, which happens to the best of us.
Yeah, I think what's happening is, do I want to loot with the Copter before I play the Dross? And if I play the Dross, I probably want to attack with the, Graveyard Glutton so that you lose 2 life if you chump block.
Yeah. And we're just going to go with the Archfiend Dross here. Makes a ton of sense, as Ty is on 11 life. You also have 1 big flying flare, and you also have the Smuggler's Copter. This Young Pyromancer is doing a really good job of crewing that throughout this game.
Mm-hmm. It also is it's a safe spot to develop. Dykman saw the get lost earlier, but now with Thalia in play, you know that you can't get sort of heavy tempoed by the Dross. Well, it looks like he's not attacking. He wants to just play a bit more defensively here.
Sure.
Might be afraid of something like Brave the Elements, naming black there and just alpha striking in.
Yeah. Although, looking at Ty's list, he doesn't run any Brave the Elements.
Yeah, and that's some of the upside you get about playing these older decks, right? Sometimes your deck updates and changes, and your opponent's used to playing against the older one, where it made a lot of sense to play Brave the Elements in a format where Mono Green's one of the best deck, Yes. But
as you would know, Mason.
Big Mono Green fan.
Looks like Adeline continues to get in the red zone. Or no, maybe not. We are at that period in the game where we're just thinking about maths and combat and can I survive? Mm-hmm. I will say, though, this Lutri deck is pretty sweet. And it's kind of wild to me to see 2 Lutri decks do well in back-to-back events, because Collins Mullen did pretty well at RC Denver with a Lutri build as well in Modern.
Yeah, I mean, I think Lutri, like we talked about at the top of the show, a little underexplored in the current metagame. Like, just in general, I should probably say beyond metagames, where it's just like, it is hard to iterate on the deck because there's obviously, you literally can only play one. It's hard to get a lot of feedback on the stuff, but I think players are starting to get it a little bit about like how you're supposed to build them. And like we talked about, Lutri is the 8th card in hand as the companion, but it unlocks some of that 9th card when you're able to cast those cheap spells. And we've talked a lot about removal in this format, and other formats too. You're copying things like expressive iteration is really strong. So I'm interested to see sort of how things develop over time. And if Dykman ends up expanding to like a 3rd color, maybe just to get, a couple splash cards. Because your mana base is allowed to have multiples. That is one thing I think lots of people forget about Lutri, is it's the spells in the deck.
Yeah. Like you can have a pretty strong mana base and just lots of one-offs.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get to see Lutri in play this game, but we're in a tense point of combat. It looks like Steven's gonna block with this Smuggler's Copter.
Yeah, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take the eats in combat and just get hit by the Adeline.
Yep.
And have the Dross trigger, put Ty, down to 7, and then hope to use like a kill spell to kill the last thing after Dross connects for lethal.
We also get a trigger of the Smuggler's Copter this way as well.
Which is nice.
Will Ty kick off this Get Lost? Or does he have something else? Oh, we have an Aganjo.
Actually pretty huge there that we have the Aganjo. Yeah. Just losing 2 less life is pretty big, and it looks like we didn't have many other plays that matter, and the Aganjo, matters a bit against Graveyard Glutton, but not a ton.
Yeah. Nice that Ty could pay the 1 mana for it, thanks to the Adeline in play. Channel is just such a sweet ability. I'm glad it came back.
It is nice, and we're seeing, Dykman, if it had a kill spell, would have lethal if the kill spell resolved, thanks to the Graveyard Glutton and the Archfiend of Dross's trigger. I mean, maybe picking up the looting. No, we're boo.
Boo.
Yeah, and thanks to the Thalia, Dykman now knows that there's nothing to really worry about because, Brave the Elements would have been used now. Our opponent loses 2 life from the Dross down to 7. Glutton's going to eat the 2 creatures down to 5. That's going to be game. Yep.
Okay, then we go to game 3 with Rakdos Lutri versus Mono White Heathens.
Yeah, and we're kind of saw.
Okay.
No, I was just gonna say, that game we saw like Dykman sort of be constricted a little bit, but I think the biggest thing was Taidhg not having that early pressure, missing on the kind of like turn 1, and only having something like a Thalia, just didn't line up well with the hand that we saw Dykman have.
Yeah, it was kind of a tense match. There was a lot of in the tank. I need to think about combat mass that you wouldn't often see in a matchup like this. Granted, Rakdos Lutri is a very unique deck that we barely seen anything on coverage before, but there was a lot of small decisions that could have lost Dykman the game, but I think Dykman played that really well. The Young Pyromancer did a really good job of just throwing the copter and just chipping away, trying to find what Dykman needs. Getting rid of the Hidetsuku was a really smart play, allowing, keeping the lands, playing the Archfiend of Dross, which inevitably won the game.
Yeah, it was a really good sort of macro level game plan of like, okay, how am I going to win this? I need something like Dross. I need to apply pressure, right? My opponent's just going to present this never-ending flood of creatures. And, the normal Rakdos deck doesn't have enough answer spells to answer everything. Yeah. Lord knows I can't. So let's try and, maneuver in that way. And I was going to be interested to see how the players want to play game number 3 as well. And, how Ty's adapting to this Lutri deck, right? There's got to be a lot of question marks about, okay, like, is cut down the extra kill spell? Is it Bloodchief's Thirst? Is it, like, what's happening here? How's Dykman making it work?
Yeah, like, how do you even sideboard against, like, a Lutri deck that just has all these weird one-offs? It's like, it's really hard to, like, prepare yourself for, right? Like, all you can do is kind of just be aggressive. And, with Ty now on the play, you just want that curve. I don't think you can afford to miss a turn 1 play against a deck like this. That is just bred with removal spells, interaction, and then this, like, Rakdos mid-range game plan of I'm going to kill all your stuff, and then I'm just going to play my big Archfiend of Dross for the win.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned, like, how you're supposed to play on it. My guess is that you just assume all the good cards are there, but there's only one. And then you just assume what's the second best version of those cards and the third best. And that's going to be the stuff for the main deck. And then the sideboard's just, well, what's the second best? You know what I mean? Like, Kalidas, sort of worse than Archfiend and Sheoldred, but we see it made to the deck, Alcazat's kind of, worse than, all these cards, but sort of something we have in our main deck as a way to grind in the mirror matches. So just kind of, I would imagine, it requires a lot of depth of knowledge in the format, which is a big ask for players. Not all players study all the decks going on. They kind of try to learn and master their one deck, which can be very fruitful. As we've seen, Zoe Riederman was, undefeated playing the Convoke deck here. But maybe she might struggle against other decks like this, and other players will as well, because they don't know all the cards and they don't have even an idea of like an inkling of a card to play around.
Right. And as mentioned at the top of the show, we talked about how Pioneer has been on the back burner for such a long time. So for a lot of people, they're coming back into Pioneer for the first time in a few months. a new set's come out, Ixalan's came out. So that knowledge of cards might not be as strong as it was like 2-3 months ago. Thus, playing against a Lutri deck that's just playing all these similar versions of the same cards that just came out in recent sets. That knowledge, that lack of just, not playing a lot of Pioneer might hinder you just because the competitive circle is mostly modern and standard right now.
Agreed. And what's got me wondering is, I wonder if Dykman put any of the Surveil lands in his deck, speaking of the new sets coming out, just because when you have Surveilling, right, like you want to actually like get some agency and the ability to control your draw step. And when you have a bunch of 1-ofs, you want to make sure you find the right thing. It looks like he did, decide not to play any of those this weekend, but that's an interesting thing to see as well. He's playing 3 Hive of the Eye Tyrants this weekend. Yeah. Maybe he's supposed to play 1 Surveil land. I have no idea. It's just literally off the cuff thinking, like, hey, I gotta find the right cards in the right spot. So
I can see it.
Yeah,
the Surveil lands are pretty sweet. Anyway, let's go back to the feature match area. It seems the players are decided their hands, and we are cracking away. So Ty has that all important 10-1 play with the Kithian hero of Akros.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll see what Dykman wants to do here. Okay, I believe I see the Smuggler's Copter in hand, which is a really nice card to hit every time. I think that's it. Hard still. But yep, here comes the Cut Down, which is a pretty damn good card in Standard. A card that we'll probably see quite a lot tomorrow in the Standard event tomorrow. And now it goes back to Dykman, where looks like he's getting a bit heavy on lands. We do have a Young Pyromancer that we saw do a lot of work last game. And it looks like we're just going to crack out a Bloodtithe Harvester, which is pretty good at dealing with these lower toughness threats that humans has a lot of.
Yeah, it sort of, lets you answer something like a Thalia underneath her. Normally she like taxes you. Or your opponents, I should say, and sort of, even if she dies, she sort of was like a stumbling block for them developing. Bloodtithe Harvester gets around that, and also, can just block you. Let's say we're going to kill this recruitment officer now. We can just trade, and if not, we can also start attacking for a lot of damage.
Yeah.
Also, worth noting, Emma, we normally have 2, so we can kill stuff like Adeline. We know there's not a second one coming.
Yeah. And speaking of Adeline, Ty plays an Adeline, and it looks like it's going to push in for a lot of damage unless Dykman has the appropriate removal spell to deal with this really powerful threat. Is what makes humans just so good, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Adeline is just a very, very strong threat at taking over games, and it's something that is, we have seen the power of time and time again of an unchecked one just runs away with the game out of nowhere. I
do love that Dykman just played a Noxious Grasp, which is really good against mono white creatures. It's just very appropriate for this certain situation.
Yeah, and that's the thing that normally you probably wouldn't see that card. We might have like 3 or something to fight a certain matchup, but we need a card that covers control as well.
And Dykman just drew a fantastic answer in Anger of the Gods, being able just to sweep up the board. But here comes another Adeline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's hard for the traditional Rakdos deck to answer Adelines consistently like this.
Yeah.
Dykman, who sometimes, like we mentioned, sometimes the cards line up a bit better than they normally would. Sometimes they line up a bit worse, right? Cut Down better against Lorraine than Fatal Push is typically, but a little worse here. Inversely, Cut Down actually be great here. Bad example, but you get the idea. Sometimes the cards don't line up great.
Yeah. We talked about that with the Hida Suku in the last game.
Yep.
So it looks like...
Honestly, I'm just going to say it. I want Dykman, play the Copter, play your land, pick up the Lutri. Next turn, stomp Lutri, copy the stomp, call it a day.
Oh,
let's
that would be chef's kiss. We want some actual Lutri action.
Yeah.
Free the Elemental Otter.
The real question is, does it make a copy of the Bonecrusher Giant? I know the answer is no, but I'll bait chat a little bit before I tell the answer.
Get some engagement.
Yeah. It looks like Dykman hates fun.
I think Dykman likes winning, as evident from last season.
Yeah, the enemy of fun, as it were.
I mean, that's what you get for being a player of the year and the 2023 NRG champs, I guess.
Yeah, and this is an interaction I had not seen before. This game that is pretty punishing here for Adeline is you just basically get to loot with your copter every time.
Yep, and now here comes the wedding announcement, which we talked about during sideboarding, about how this card is backbreaking, often against Rakdos midrange, and it's likely going to snowball out of control here.
Yeah,
we also have a judge call quickly.
Yeah, so 2 creatures attacked because of Adeline. But I think how it works is Adeline puts one in tapped and attacking, if I remember correctly, which wedding announcement for some reason doesn't see as the same. So they're just double checking to make sure that, Ty will get a 1/1 human instead of drawing a card. It is a weird wording situation. I personally can't remember the exact ruling, but it's something that happens typically in Pioneer a long time ago, and it's been a while since it came up. So I think everyone's just getting a reminder that is how it works, because it is a odd interaction.
Yeah. Considering we haven't had any meaningful Pioneer events for a while, some of these rulings can be a little bit rusty. So it's good to just call a judge if you're not sure.
Yeah. Can't hurt. And Twitch chat can't help but tell us exactly how the rules work. Joke's on them, though. I can't read. So a bunch of hieroglyphics over here telling me.
Yeah.
Dykman, pick up the Lutri.
We want to see the Lutri. Come on.
Oh, I see him looking in the corner.
Yes!
Let's go! I swear to God, if he loots away this Lutri, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to cut to the other back.
I don't know if there's an otter emote, but can we get some otters in the chat?
Yeah, there's got to be an otter emote. The real question is...
Tree. Also, Farley as lieutenant is going to be a pretty nice one here. Just adding more, making Adeline almost unkillable.
Yeah. Interesting make here, too, from Ty. Had the option to attack with the 1/1 token that recently became a 2/2 in exchange of guaranteed push damage. That way the Smuggler's Copter can't just eat the 1/1. Oh, ever get lost.
Yep. The Smuggler's Copter told to go away, so it's going away. Flying off to another place.
It's interesting. Ty will get to draw a card now with the mono white, but not always is drawing a card actually better than getting the 1/1 when we have stuff like Adeline, like Sally's Lieutenant. So it's a real decision point there from Ty, but they think the get lost helps move the needle a lot.
Oh, we have to crack this Bonecrusher Giant right now. This stomp. No fun Lutri shenanigans.
I believe in the top of Dykman's deck.
So do I. There's so much nonsense. I just want to see all of it.
Yeah, honestly, Dykman has the Exodia combo of Lutri with Extinction of it, naming both even and odd, still on the table.
Oh.
So
now that's pod racing.
Yeah.
Do you think Dykman's just drawn another land, though? I believe it's the red-black pathway.
Perfect for my Extinction event line. We need 7 mana, Emma, and we're at 5. We're so close. I wonder, Lutri copying a Languish too,
Oh, there's so many fun things you can do. Are you, let's be honest, Mason, are you going to build a Lutri deck now after this show?
I have a serialized Lutri, so I've been known to game. Let's just put it that way,
Very serious.
Yeah.
What number is it?
132, something like that. I don't know, 134. Okay.
Just no unique association with the number. You just wanted a serialized Lutri.
Yep. Exactly. Nice. Just wanting, I'm a believer in Lutri. Let's put it that way. just it might be a long timeline, and that's okay. I'm willing to wait.
I'm also becoming a believer of Lutri especially after today.
Yeah,
going 3-0 with a Lutri deck is no easy feat. Let's be honest.
It's true. And one thing to keep in mind too, chat, is recently we had companion rules change as well. So you can have your companion in a different sleeve as long as you have an extra sleeve with you. And also, once you announce your companion, it is assumed to be that way for the remainder of the match. So if you're playing, this Lutri deck, that's a big one. Yeah, that's a card that can make us buy back our Lutri and then copy another spell. But once you announce Lutri, you're assumed to have Lutri until you say otherwise. And in Dykman's deck, that means just one time. So kind of a nice little, quality of life improvement recently with the rules, which we love to see.
That is really good. I did not know that. I will put my Gigantha in a different sleeve then when I play Convoke.
Okay, Twitch chat's telling me that I can't have 132 because they have 132, and so now I'm going to check this because I have my Lutri right next to me. I'll let chat know in 2 seconds.
Oh my god!
Please hold.
Mason's just lying to you.
259. I wasn't close.
That's not even close.
Yeah, also, my Karuga, Yumori, Kahira, and Yorion are not 132 either. I was not right on any of them. I might have a collection of serialized companions. Who's to say? Who's to say?
Who is to say? Oh, looks like we have another Farley's Lieutenant coming in. Ty's just going to slowly... Granted, only got a few creatures on board, but this will slowly snowball out. But to be honest, I'm really looking forward to seeing Lutri and Colligan's command. That just sounds like a great time.
Honestly, it's infinite value. We talk about Lutri being your 9th card. If you pick it up with the Kolaghan's command, it becomes your 11th card.
Yeah.
Honestly, I kind of like just not attacking here.
Okay.
And just growing our things bigger with the wedding announcement, because I believe... Oh, I'm sorry, we would still be tradable, excuse me. Pardon me. I thought we would be bigger than the Giant plus Season Pyromancer in the future. We would not be. Actually, do like this attack a lot, given that.
Okay. It's not going to take long for this wedding announcement to flip either.
As we do see some thinking here. It's interesting, too, because now with the Lutri, right, you could see something like trade here at the Adelaine and then get lost. Oh, sorry, cast your Kolaghan's command, shoot down the Thalia's Lieutenant, right? Pick back up these cards, and then your Lutri won't get Lutri back off Kolaghan's command, but you actually kind of have like a good amount-ish of value.
Yeah. I just think Dykman's figuring out the best way to survive this turn.
Yeah,
so we can live the Lutri dream next turn. So it looks like we are dealing with the Adeline because it is just going to snowball out of control. But this wedding announcement does flip over. So Ty gets a nice +1/+1 buff to his creatures.
Yeah, and that is going to matter for things like Stomp here. It's going to be much harder for it to catch some of the creature in Ty's deck as well, which, we could be seeing coming out here. Some of the Kolaghan's command.
We're going to play Lutri.
I think we're doing it, Emma. I think we're Kolaghan's commanding with Lutri.
Yes. Are you happy now, Mason?
I'm very happy. So it looks like we shot everything at the Thalia's Lieutenant, and we're buying back Bonecrusher Giant plus one of the other creatures. Oh, looks like we decided Season Pyromancer. Sure.
I thought Bloodtithe Harvester could have been a consideration as well.
I think he put it on the front of his graveyard. It looks like he was trying to figure out, do I want to have these extra 1/1s or the ability to rummage with the blood? Pretty close either way, but ends up going the other direction.
Lutri's on blocking duty.
Yeah, it's a shame we didn't, have something like some other kill spell, then we could Kolaghan's command back to Lutri, but such is life.
Yeah. Lutri got a lot of value there.
Mhm. Oh, Molten Collapse, I think,
Molten
was the draw.
Collapse. Yeah, I think it was a Molten Collapse.
That is a big
Yeah.
one.
That is a big one.
Bigger with Lutri, but I'm over it.
Hey, we can make some elemental tokens. It's not quite the same, but it helps. This young Pyromancer is going to do a good job at shoring up some aggression. Ty does have a Castle Arden Veil as well, which is worth noting. Just being able to make a constant stream of 2/2s is just going to be so relevant in the late game. Although Dykman does have a Hive of the Eye Tyrant, which we'll probably get in the aggressive zone fairly soon.
Yeah, and it's looking like Dykman's deciding if he wants to just hard cast the Bonecrusher Giant or stomp. I have to imagine he needs to stomp just given how little life he has, but it's definitely not the play you want to make. You want to be making the 4/3.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you mentioned, this castle is going to be huge, and especially like, we're up to something. The 4 life means that, like we're basically getting to a point where really quickly all of these are going to be lethal for the remainder of the game.
Yeah, right. And Dykman just has to keep churning spells to make tokens with this young Pyromancer just to keep in the game.
Mm-hmm.
That is a Languish, I believe, which is not the best card right now.
Mm-hmm.
Bonecrusher Giant does a good job at shoring some aggression, but I would be surprised if this Sokuzan gets exchanged for 2 spirit tokens.
Yeah, Dykman has had oh my goodness, Dykman, you got. I was going to say he has had so much patience on the channeling of the Sokens in this entire match.
Would have been a good time to do it.
Yeah, it feels like that would have freed up our mana a little bit, but looks like Dykman
unless Dykman could be seeing something that we don't. But
yeah, I think he's trying to basically maybe hope to get Ty to extend a bunch, and then maybe use something to kill the Bonecrusher Giant. Then he'll like Sokens in channel, block, and then Languish to clean up and hope to go the distance from there. But it's a huge ask still. And really we need something like Archfiend to Dross to come off the top so that we can clean up the battlefield and with the Languish and actually do a bunch of damage to Ty.
Yeah.
But
Dykman's not in the best position here. And when you're just letting the white player just go to basically pass the turn and make tokens, it's another hopeful initiate.
Yeah, and Dykman is really close to being attacked down here. And this makes me think that Dykman's probably going to use Languish.
Yes.
I wonder. Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say use the Languish, then maybe, use the Sokuzan as just something like post-board wipe. Even then, that doesn't feel really strong when you're still going to be dealing with a bunch of 2/2s and you're on 4 life.
Yeah, just that is the power of the castle here. It's just every single turn is going to be an issue. I wonder if Dykman has to like attack with this Bonecrusher Giant first or something. I don't know. Like we need to like get some damage in because we drew Deep Cavern Bat. So if we can like Languish and then Deep Cavern Bat and then draw like our Inti, we can maybe race for a little bit. But it is going to be like not an easy task.
Especially when you're running nothing but 1-ofs in your deck. Adeline's a good hit.
Yeah, that was a really good one.
That's a really good hit. Don't think it's going to do too much against these 2/2s though. And the bat is going to disappear and
honestly,
get lost.
This get lost, if we're not dead on the board, I don't know the exact amount of attackers. There looks to be 6 attackers with Adeline being up to 7. They're all lethal. Sokens in, only makes 4 blockers. We're at 4 life. We look to be dead. Our patience kind of came back to bite us here a little bit, but definitely a spot where if Dykman lives, the map tokens could matter, but I think Dykman's just going to die. I think we're just going to slime everything. Yeah. And I think Dykman was just a little too patient there.
Yeah, I feel like not cracking that Sokazan earlier may have costed him.
Yeah, it looks like he has some amount of kill spells and stuff, but still the Adelane's going to survive this Languish. And now the Languish is less effective. And we're having to use, things like Raven Feeblement on that instead of Rang to finish off the Adelaine. And so, it's hard to know in the moment to do things like, I'm just going to Languish here and put the bat in and hope to race. But sometimes it goes that way.
Yeah, even though we did see the really sick Lutri play of, Lutri into Colligan's command, I don't think it's going to be quite enough. But hey, at least we got to see the fun thing.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess if Dykman draws something like Extinction Event, we could make like one of those cards could be really good. But I don't know. Maybe the actual trick is Dykman needs to just draw something that kills like the last couple damage to Adelaine. And then there's going to be one turn where Ty doesn't present lethal with the wedding announcement token. I'm sorry, the Castle Ardenvale tokens. And we can stabilize because that could be the case. Like if you have another thing that finishes off Adelaine and you go pop map, get your giant to be a 6/5, then you're close to getting there.
Yeah, but Ty is also on 20 life.
Yeah, I mean the 20 life part is not going unnoticed.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lesson the braid.
That's huge because that guarantees the Bonecrusher Giant's going to live, which guarantees that the Adelaine won't be able to attack in for lethal, is what we currently know. But yeah, Dykman's just going to pick it up.
Oh, that's a shame. It just what you mentioned earlier, it just feels like Dykman was just punished for being a bit too patient when I feel like there was definitely a couple of turns earlier where he could have just cracked that Sokenzan and maybe not deal with the onslaught of wedding announcement and Castle Ardenvale. Who knows? But don't get me wrong, it was really cool to see Lutri do its thing, TM for a game.
Yeah, it was. And there's also there's a lot of moments where Dykman, very patient, very conservative player, have a lot of respect for that. But you have to wonder too, is Languish in the bat not just the best it's going to be? Obviously, it's not good. You just kind of have to roll the dice and hope things work out sometimes. And unfortunately, it didn't work out there for Dykman. And had he even done those things, it's not clear he would have won against the Castle, which is a kind of awkward place to be. But congratulations there to Ty, moving on to 4-0 with Mono White Humans. 4 more rounds to go. We're going to bring you coverage of all those and our top 8 tonight. So make sure to stay tuned, click that follow button, and we'll be back after this break with more magic. Time is called in the round.